After, we got a call from a private agency that told us that we had been selected by a birth mother to be the parents of the child that she was going to have, and that she would be born in 3 months. With what we had gone through up to that point, I wasn't really excited. And besides, it was a little girl. And I always envisioned a little boy, Miami Heat, Miami Dolphins, and so it just didn't strike me. So when Nina was born, I was smitten by that little girl. There's nothing like Nina saying, "Papi, I love you." And I remember after the first playoff game in which Shaquille O'Neal was on the Miami Heat, Marty and I attended the first playoff game. And Nina was there dressed in her Shaquette outfit. When Nina was not 16 months old, we got a call from a child agency that took in kids that had been removed from their parents because of abuse, abandonment, and neglect. They had a 20-month-old little boy who had been taken from his mother because of violence and drugs in that home. I still wanted a boy, so off to the agency we went. When we saw this little boy, he was cute and energetic. Aren't they all, right? But he was not what I had in mind. His skin color was a little darker than mine. His nose certainly wasn't as long as mine. It wasn't as thin as mine. And his lips just were a little thicker than mine. We were told if we did not take him home, that he would be taken to a shelter that night. So I looked at my wife and said, "Let's take him home." The next day, I told Marty that we could not keep that boy. He just wouldn't fit in. So I called the agency and told them that we wanted him picked up. They told me that the other possible family that could possibly accept placement was out of town for 10 days. And they asked me if I could foster him until then. I said, 10 days? I said, please, can you just stay with him for 10 days? I said, okay. But a funny thing happened in those 10 days. We fell in love. I called the agency and told them that we had changed our mind. For over 2.5 years, Marty and I fostered Eric. Today, Eric is my son. In addition to Nina and Eric, who are now both 10, we also adopted Daniel, who is now 8. I hope this stays up. These are my kids. These kids are my life. Let me share 2 recent stories with you. Little Danny, a couple months ago, comes up to me and says, "Daddy, when I get older, can I change my name?" So I'm wondering, gosh, I wonder what he doesn't like about his name. And I said, "Danny, why would you want to change your name? And what would you want to change it to?" He says, "I want to change it to William so I could be just like you." All my kids know that they're adopted. We have adoption parties. It's all open. And we are open about discussing their adoption and how they got placed, etc. At night, we pray before we go to sleep. And my oldest recently asked me, "Daddy, why did my parents give me up?" And I told them, I said, just like the other, you too, your parents had to make a very courageous decision. They believed that you had a right to be raised a certain way, and they made a very courageous decision to place them and place you with us. My son looked at me and said, "Daddy, that was the best decision they ever made." My life today is about pickups, drop-offs, timeouts, play dates, coaching, homework, and being the only homeroom dad at their elementary school. My kid's schedule is my schedule. I'm 59 years old, but God must have plans for me to live till I'm 159. And I pray that He does, because I worry a lot about my mortality and about how long I'll be around for my kids, and if it'll be enough time to prepare them for life. In the year 2010, I had a bar hearing before the Board of Bar Examiners on my application for readmission. 32 current or former judges either appeared or wrote letters on my behalf, including the Chief Judge for the United States District Court of the Southern District of Florida and a former Florida Supreme Court Justice. Additionally, over 100 attorneys recommended my admission. A week after that hearing, I received a letter from the board stating that they had denied my application with leave to apply in 2 years. However, 3.5 months later, the board determined that contrary to the 10-year judgment, which had given me the right to reapply and be readmitted if I demonstrated rehabilitation, that no demonstration of rehabilitation would ever suffice to allow my readmission to the legal profession. I was convinced that the Florida Supreme Court, in reviewing this recommendation, would see it differently. While I knew that whatever the court decided would not give me happiness, I also knew that it could not take it away. In February of 2012, the Florida Supreme Court issued its opinion affirming the board. A petition for writ of certiorari was filed with the United States Supreme Court, but was later denied. That meant that I would never practice law again in Florida. Or did it? You will remember that I said that I first received a letter from the board denying my application for 2 years, only later for it to be changed to permanent denial. I always believed, or wanted to believe, that the discrepancy was attributable to someone sending out the wrong denial letter. But by pure accident, we obtained the board's confidential deliberations, which showed that their decision was 2 years, and their verdict form, which also reflected 2 years, not a permanent denial. What occurred was that the board's general counsel and its executive director, possessing those records, fraudulently changed the board's decision and submitted that as the board's decision to the Florida Supreme Court for review. Talk about egregious misconduct. If you or I did that, not only would we be in jail, but they would throw away the key. We filed a motion to vacate the permanent denial judgment with the Florida Supreme Court, believing that the court would want to at least hold a hearing to investigate these very serious allegations. But last year, the court issued an order stating only that our motion was unauthorized. I ask you, if the Florida Supreme Court does not have the authority to review misconduct committed by its own agency in charge of determining the character and fitness of applicants to the bar, then who does? My quixotic quest for readmission continues. For now, I just want to know the truth. It has been an honor for me to be here today. I want to thank Professor Bachelarge for inviting me. In the original Florida Supreme Court opinion, Justice Pariente made some very instructive remarks in her concurrence. I know she was speaking to me directly. Quote, "I would hope that Castro will still be motivated to continue his involvement in the wonderful community activities that have been described by his scores of supporters, and that he will continue to teach others the lessons that he has learned. While these lessons may be too late in his case, Castro's efforts may encourage, inspire, and motivate others to be better lawyers and human beings, all of whom may look at each day as an opportunity to give back to our community in a meaningful way." The most important lesson I have learned is that in giving, not taking, that we receive. 3 other things I have gleaned along the way. First, if it feels wrong, it probably is. Second, do what's right and don't worry about the rest. And 3, I was not born to be a lawyer, but to be the best husband, father, son, and friend that I could. Over 20 years ago, I thought I was the smartest guy in the criminal courthouse. But that arrogance and greed only brought shame to me, my family, and the profession I loved. It has taken me over 40% of my life to regain the trust of my community. But this time around, I have done it the right way. To those here who intend to enter the profession, please understand that the oath you will take must represent more than a meal ticket or an excuse to act like a big shot. For to whom much is given, much is expected. You have an incredible opportunity to do so much good for this community. Don't blow it. But you cannot just pretend to follow the rules by day and lead another life elsewhere. How often have we heard non-lawyers use the words attorney and asshole in the same sentence or interchangeably? As attorneys, you will be called to be examples 24/7. And speaking of those rules, we should always aspire to conduct ourselves not just by what the rules minimally require us to do. You must all take it to another level. In closing, I want to leave you with several questions for each of you to ponder. First, why do I want to be a lawyer? Second, what talents will I bring to the legal profession? Third, am I a giver or a taker? Four, am I passionate about helping others? And finally, when am I going to start? Thank you very much.
Does anyone have any questions they want to ask Mr. Castro? One over here.
Yes,
Do you regret it?
absolutely.
Follow up? You said this, the events that have happened since the time you made the decision have helped you through this transformation. How are those two things compatible, both regretting the decision and appreciating the transformation that you've gone through?
Regretting the decision?
That you made with specific reference to the decision you made with the judge to act criminally.
Okay. I think sometimes what has to happen is that you have to fall off the horse, and I fell off the horse, and I hit rock bottom. And I look back and I tell people sometimes that if I knew that I had to go through all this, I would do it again. Not the criminal activity, but to be where I am today, to fully understand what's important in life and the priorities in my life. As much as the community, for the most part, has forgiven me, I try to engage in forgiveness every day. And it's very difficult, but all I can tell you is that I can't change what I did. I can only try to do the best forthwith.
How do you think, I'm sure you've given this a lot of thought, how do you think would have been appropriate to handle that situation? I mean, the way you laid the story out, it seemed very compelling that you were going to have a lot of problems with this judge if you didn't go with it. I'm sure reporting him would have made you a lot of enemies. What do you think would have been the right way to navigate that?
The right way, obviously, is to report it, is to completely remove yourself from that situation. I mean, in my life at the time, it was gray when it was really black and white. And when you live in the gray, as you know, being in law school, you can make an argument for everything. If I had God, if I had the right morals at the time, I would have made a different decision. Had nothing to do with smarts.
No, I'm just curious as how, in a pragmatic sense, how that decision would play out. Like, would you have begun trying to convince him not to, or gone straight to the bar? I don't know. Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, maybe ideally he said, "You must be kidding. stop it, you know, and just go have another drink. But otherwise, you know, if he insisted, there's really nothing else to discuss other than to report it. Because to not report it is also not a good thing.
Thank you.
Sure, yes.
You said it was multiple judges that were involved. Were you aware of the extent while you were involved?
I was not. I was not. So, you know, there was two aspects to Operation Courtroom. One is case fixing, which there was this judge and a few other judges and some lawyers involved in actually fixing the outcome of cases. I had no idea that that was going on. And this judge, I guess, the one who asked me for the help, had his hand in a lot of cookie jars. And I also didn't know that others were involved in kickbacks for court appointments. Yes?
Who is it exactly that judges report to? I'm sorry, who is it exactly that judges report to? You were saying this is that you reported, but who is it you report to? The bar? Does the bar, the judges answer to the
You
bar?
reported to as many people as will hear you. Law enforcement, the bar, until you turn blue. It was wrong. Yes?
Does the practice of political donations from lawyers to judges continue today?
It does. The system was changed, so you know during that time it was considered within the practice in Dade County almost political patronage, that people would help judges and they had unfettered discretion to appoint, and you would just get it. There would be judges during a calendar year that would only appoint one lawyer in their courtroom for court appointments, and they would make hundreds of thousands of dollars. Under the law, it was perfectly okay. So it wasn't, on the surface, something that would be unusual for it to be occurring. Yes?
Do you believe that your contribution to society through your experience and you reflecting back and telling us this outweighs your contribution to a legal community, to your legal community when you practice? Do you think this is more important? Do you think sharing your story with lawyers and future lawyers is more important than the contribution you have made to the legal community while practicing?
The answer is yes. Even though I still continue to write. I write for a lot of lawyers. I tell Professor all the time is that my blessing is also my curse, is that I can write. So I'm able to channel and maintain up to date with the law, and I enjoy writing. So it's just behind the scenes, and that's okay. And that's okay. I did litigate, and I did try cases, and but fortunately for me, that I could always write also. So now it's just, I can't talk in court, but I accompany other lawyers. I do a lot of things that I'm able to facilitate in the defense of cases. And my wife's back at the state attorney's office. Yes?
Would you continue criminal defense if you get admitted again?
I would. There's nothing to run from as far as criminal defense. If practiced correctly, it's a very noble area. Yeah, I know, having throughout the years spoken to other lawyers who have either been suspended or disbarred and have a hesitancy into going back in the areas that they practice or in the same courthouses, there should be no hesitancy. I mean, if you're going to do things correctly, you're going to do things correctly.
Oh, one other question over
Yes.
here.
What's your next step in trying to solve the indiscrepancies with the bar? Where do you go from having the Supreme Court tell you that they don't have the authority to look into it. What do you do after that? Or what do you plan to do after that?
Well, what we have done is, since the Florida Supreme Court has decided that they don't want to address the matter on the merits, what we have recently done is, instead of filing it as a part of the litigation and seeking my readmission, we have filed it as a motion under the Florida Rules of Judicial Administration to obtain access of confidential court records, in which they are authorized to review, and really to obtain more confidential documents showing the corruption that occurred. What they recently did is that they denied it with leave to file a motion with the custodian of those records, who are the Board of Bar Examiners, to seek those records. Pending before the court now is a motion for rehearing and a motion to disqualify the board to be able to entertain that request, because one, they are the subject of the corruption, and number two, they have already indicated initially in their pleadings that I should not be entitled to those documents, and I filed that under oath. So we're waiting for that to occur, but we've already drafted a federal civil rights lawsuit that will be filed. And I'm still, at the beginning of the year, seek readmission to the New York Bar. Again, my writing is my blessing and my curse, because I do all the writing, and some of my friends will just approve it and file it for me. Thank you so very much.